Hi, how's it going? This is Resident of Collinwood for YouTube. I am here to do a Jason Voorhees video for you on this October. Um, so I don't know, when you come to this channel, I don't know how many people have watched horror movies. I assume you have. Um, that's number one. Number two, if you haven't, don't worry, I'm going to give you a crash course with this movie, especially because I love pretty much all the Jason movies. I have no problem with any of them. Um, so far. So, guilty pleasure, right? And one of my favorite installments, Jason Takes Manhattan, I've always felt very strangely about this movie. Now, most people say, well, it's Jason on a boat, and it is. They're not wrong. I've always felt this movie felt like a dream. And the reason I say this is for one reason and one reason only. The protagonist of the film, Remy. To me, she feels like the least real character ever created. And I don't say that as a knock to the actress. I say this because this movie has one of the strangest openings of them. But this is prior to Jason Goes to Hell. This is prior to Jason X. Jason in space. Yes, if you've never watched the Friday the 13th movies, Jason went into space. Um, and he he dominated. He also got his ass kicked too. Uh, you know, Uber Jason, right? So when this film opens up, you get this radio monologue, and you get shots of New York City. Now, I want to make this very clear. This film, though it's supposed to be set in New York, never takes place in New York. It takes place in Canada. They did not have the money for New York. Um, okay. Yes, they. Just saying. That being said, after this opening, you meet this lovely young teenage couple who are on a private boat owned by the mail. They're having sex. They're fondling each other. And this guy decides to draw a banker. Now you might say, where is this boat conveniently placed? Oh, it's in Crystal Lake. Now that being said, there's also a underground cable, or sorry, a cable in the water that's near Jason. That's near this anchor drags, catches, electrocutes Jason back to life. That's the opening of this movie. And you might say, why do I feel like this is a dream sequence? Well, let's think about it. Let's think about the previous Jasons. In Jason Lives, what happens? He is stabbed by a metal rod, awakened by Tommy Jarvis. Couldn't you hypothetically say that he's just reliving that version of events, but in a different way underneath the water? Just saying. You really could. Jason awakens, and I say that loosely, to kill the two uh, premarital sex going couple. Now, the plot of this movie is the kids who were on the boat who were killed, who were on the small yacht, whatever boat, are part of a graduating class in high school. And they're not the only ones who will be this. There's a larger boat that is going to set sail from the shores, not necessarily of Crystal Lake, but up the road from Crystal Lake. This is another part of the lake we don't know about. I feel at this point, Friday the 13th is stretching the lake a bit. It's like, really, really, and I love Jason Takes Manhattan. It feels like Jurassic Park. Like, how many islands can there really be? Um, Now, that being said, I find this sequence strange, and it doesn't get any less weirder. And I'll point some things out that may. Because the question I have with this is, did Freddy Krueger cause Jason Voorhees to dream this whole thing? And I'll give some behind the scenes standpoint from the franchise here in a moment. The behind the scenes is Jason, the New Blood, was supposed to be Freddy versus Jason. I gotta believe the writers of Jason Takes Manhattan knew this. And when writing this, they wrote this kind of like a dream. Look how hazy it is the next morning after those two young teens are killed. And the only person who seems to notice the murders is a crazy mechanic. The ship, the ship's, guy who sweeps the boat. It says we're all doomed. He's basically Crazy Ralph. He's Crazy Ralph adjacent. Now, who would think up a character like this? I would almost dare say you would be dreaming this. Because who killed Crazy Ralph? Jason. Who knew Crazy Ralph's existence? Jason. The only, again, and who would be playing on that in Jason's mind in his dream? Freddy. Which leads me to the story, the protagonist of this movie, Remy, a lovely, lovely, beautiful girl. I do like Remy as a protagonist. I'm not saying any of this to pick on the character. I want to make that very clear. When I say she's the least realistic, her backstory just seems very far-fetched. And granted, it's a lot better than Chris's, but not by much. Okay, Remy's backstory is her parents, when she was real young, died in an accident. Then the person who raises her is her uncle, who, according to Remy, almost caused her to drown in the waters of Crystal Lake, where her uncle took her up there, and he was rowing in a boat. He wanted her to learn how to swim, and he kind of scares her. He tells her the story of, Jason never learned to drown, that's why he drowned. He never learned to swim, that's why he drowned. This is the guy who gets custody of her, who almost caused her to drown. Now, you might say, why don't I feel this is a real seat, like, at all? This right here. Because not just her uncle, that entire sequence there of Remy's parents are dead. Okay, Jason's parents we know very little about. So you know very little about Remy's parents. Almost nothing, other than they died in an accident. And her uncle isn't exactly forthcoming with information. You might say, oh, okay, what about the uncle? You haven't made a strong enough case against him. Take a look at that uncle. He's He's very demanding of kids. He's very. He doesn't really care for them. He's not very mindful or watchful of them. I would say he's every camp counselor who ever turned their back again on a kid ever without actually being a camp counselor. Though he's a principal. I don't say that as a knock against principals. I say that as this guy is the worst principal you could have from a watching the kids standpoint. Especially, he's more controlling of his own niece. He seems to be in places where his niece is all the time. He's very controlling. When the kids start getting killed off or go missing, he just chucks it up there, out there having a good time, like any camp counselor would. This movie takes place majority on a boat. It's my next suggestion that this is even more Freddy. On a boat. You know what's in a boat? A boiler room. A fucking boiler room. Just saying. Just saying. Also, doesn't Jason in this movie seem to be everywhere and nowhere at the same time? I'd say, well, he's been like that in other movies. Yes, but more particularly here. And I know other people are going to say, oh, well, Kelly, Hughes' character, who, whatever, the reason she hallucinates is because she was on drugs. You would be correct. The character was on drugs, not the actress. You would be correct. But my counter argument to that is not every character is on drugs, and this goes on with every character that Jason kills or stalks in this movie. Who can manipulate a dream again? Freddy. Who can manipulate that Jason was everywhere and nowhere at the same time? And by the way, back to Remy. Remy keeps hallucinating about a young Jason that does not look like the Jason that drowned in the original movie. Again, who can manipulate things? Freddy. She sees Jason in a mirror. She sees, Jason haunts this woman like she's Tommy Jarvis. Couldn't we also make the case that Jason is remembering Tommy through a woman in a sense? Also, even in New York, Jason is everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Other until the final sequences of events where he's stalking Remy and her boyfriend through New York, and they're the final ones. Then magically, Jason has lost his ability to appear everywhere and nowhere. Now, he has a jump scare, but I could make the case that's just typical horror movie jargon. When he kills the tunnel worker, sewer tunnel worker, because they're going to, at midnight, they're going to flood the sewers of New York with toxic to clean said tunnels. Does that make sense to anybody? I mean, maybe they do that. I don't know. And that gets me to the end of this movie. The tunnels of New York, the toxic ooze about Jason. Remy opens one of the jugs, throws it at Jason. The toxic ooze is melting him. Not that that would be hard. The guy's undead anyway. He's a zombie. And then she starts climbing. Jason's coming toward her, and here comes a toxic ooze, which you would think would totally disintegrate Jason, right? I mean, this is the ideal, because she rescues her boyfriend. They're trying to get out of it, out of the sewer, up the ladder. You would think this is totally disintegrating Jason, right? Well, my friends, you would be wrong if you said yes. It transforms, yes, you heard me, transforms Jason back from an adult to a small boy just laying there in the sewer. Now, when I describe that to you, to me, watching this movie, and I love this movie, I'm not picking on it, I'm not sitting here to pick on it. And if you ask anybody who knows me, they'll tell you I love this movie. Doesn't that sequence in itself seem like a far-fetched dream? Jason transforms back to a kid with toxic ooze. That seems like dream magic to me. Now, is there any proof to what I'm saying? No, this is just my opinion. But I challenge you to go. Jason Takes Manhattan is not scary. It's not a scary movie. It has some jump scares, sure. It has some gruesome kills, some nudity. But I want you to watch this with an open mind. And pay very close attention to what's really going on. You folks have a nice day. Hope you are enjoying your October. Hope you are enjoying the spooky season. Take care.